On the hunt for comfortable, timeless Western boots? You already know the best place to shop for quality boots is at your local Tacova store. So stop by Tacovas Nashville at the Mall at Green Hills or on Broadway by Ryman Auditorium. That's right, you now have 2 locations to choose from. Grab a cold one as you shop and get fitted by a pro. Tacovas Nashville is at your service, and you can find your perfectly fitted dream boots with the help of their expert staff. Everyone will be asking where you got your sick new boots, but I won't be asking because I know they must be Tacovas. That's TECOVAS.com. Don't go gently, y'all.
Today on CityCast Nashville, we're thrilled to have back our food and travel contributor, Margaret Littman, whose work regularly appears in the Nashville scene. She's here to talk about a special initiative from the bagel shop in Donaldson called New Year All Year, where local chefs craft bagel sandwiches inspired by their culture's New Year traditions. With Diwali, the Indian Festival of Lights, starting on Thursday, we're joined by Chef Vivek Surti of the acclaimed Germantown restaurant Taylor. He's here to tell us more about Diwali and how it inspired the bagel he created for the bagel shop, which is available today and tomorrow only. But beyond yapping about bagels, we explore how food can serve as a bridge, helping Nashvillians connect with and better understand different cultures and religions within our community. CityCast Nashville is presented by our exclusive launch sponsor, Tacovas. It's Tuesday, October 29th. I'm Marie Cecile Anderson, and this is what Nashville's talking about. Margaret, we noticed your recent Nashville Scene article on these special sandwiches they're doing at the bagel shop, which, yes, they sound absolutely delicious. But with all the different food things happening in town, why focus on bagel sandwiches?
Well, I think this story is not just about bagel sandwiches, but it's about having a really accessible, easy way to introduce information and educate people in a way that's kind of fun and maybe make it comfortable. Also, bagel sandwiches are delicious. I also think there's something sort of fun about it in that a lot of these other traditional foods and international foods maybe haven't been served on bagels before. So that makes it sort of an interesting fusion.
Vivek, what are your thoughts on this? Do you really think that this type of concept will help foster cross-cultural understanding here in Nashville?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for a long time, I think one of the amazing things about the Nashville culinary community and the restaurant community is how collaborative everybody is. I think we all kind of believe in this a rising tide helps all ships mentality. And so we try to focus a little bit less, it's less competition, but we all just try to be there for each other, knowing that, hey, sometimes this restaurant might need a little help. What can we do to help them? Other times we're going to need help, and so just having that community is so important and so strong. For a long time, I would say like a lot of people wanted to bring in like chefs from outside of town to come to Nashville, right?
Yes.
And try to bring notoriety to the food scene here. But I think a lot of us were like, you know what, we'd rather do dinners with our friends that we don't always get to see all the time, even though our restaurants might be a few blocks from each other. So then when we're able to kind of sit down in a room, talk about a menu, cook together, make something, that's really for us like very, very meaningful in terms of our community building. I really also enjoyed that with Max and Kayla. It's like they seem to just be students and wanting to learn different things. It's like they came about and started making bagels, and bagels was what they wanted to make. But, they're like, how can we also learn about whether it's Rosh Hashanah, whether it's Diwali, whether it's Asian New Year, and things like that? What are the dishes that some of the chefs that we have here are inspired by? And then can we make that into a bagel sandwich? And, it allows the world to be open a little bit for them to, of course, have their classics and the things that people are going to expect, but also have these things that are new, while at the same time kind of driving people who might be fans of Taylor to their bagel shop. And exposing them to new clients and new restaurants.
Did you find this challenging to create a bagel? And tell us specifically about the bagel you're creating.
It was a fun one. We didn't spend too much time on the concept, really, because I basically just took like an Indian street food sandwich, which is called the dabeli. So dabeli is something that really comes from the region of Gujarat, which is the state of India that my family's from. And the word dabeli actually means pressed. So this is it's a really fun, delicious carb on carb sandwich. It's a potato patty that's seasoned with a dabali spice mixture. So it has things like cumin, coriander, red chili, but it also has some warming spices like cinnamon and star anise in there as well. And then you put it on like a buttered roll, and then you top it with masala peanuts, some diced red onion, save, and pomegranate seeds.
Oh, wow.
And you garnish it with tamarind chutney. So it's kind of a really fun street food that's, sour, spicy, sweet, savory. It kind of has all those elements in it. And so Max and Kayla came over to Taylor, and, we started just working through the recipe. And then we looked at a few different varieties of bagels. We did the sesame, the spicy everything. And then they also created a new bagel for this sandwich that we'll use, which is a onion bagel.
Oh,
Yeah, I think you're about to say the same thing. I'll volunteer for R&D.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll be a tribute, please.
Yes, as tribute.
Well, Margaret, can you tell us more about this article and what inspired you to write it?
I just thought that when I heard about this New Year, all year initiative that they were doing, I thought I was really moved by it. Certainly, I've heard about, as Vivek is saying, there's lots of other chef collaborations, and obviously chefs and restaurant owners have projects where they highlight their traditional foods or, certain holidays. But I've never heard about anything like this that is sort of a planned initiative for a whole year and that brings in so many different cross-cultural experiences. And I think that Max and Kayla told me that when they first sat down to try to figure it out, they were sort of surprised that they could almost do a New Year activity every single month of the year because there are so many different traditions. And so that's cool that you didn't come out of the gate and then have to wait for the next holiday, that there really is this year-round opportunity to celebrate the new year. I also just thought there's so much, it's not exactly the divisiveness, but there's just so much, I think, suspicion of other right now. And so I felt like this was just a really accessible, easy way to take a step towards understanding other people, to get to go there and eat a brisket sandwich from the Jewish cowboy and understand what Rosh Hashanah is, and then maybe understand why your Jewish friends aren't at work that day. I don't see how that kind of understanding can be bad. And I think it's a really non-threatening way to learn about each other's traditions.
Vivek, do you have patrons come to your restaurant who may not have ever had Indian food themselves and so are also kind of being exposed to this new type of tradition? Do you have to then have your servers be extremely knowledgeable and kind of walk them through everything?
Yeah. Where we try to focus on, and what's important to me, is we call what we do first generation American cuisine. So I grew up here in Tennessee, but my family comes from India. And probably the question I get asked more than any other is, where do you go for Indian food? And so to me, that's where I feel like there's an opportunity to educate kind of right off the bat, is that India is an incredibly diverse country in terms of region and geography. So to say the words Indian food is a little misleading, because India is made up of 29 different states, and each state has an entirely different cuisine. So you could grow up in one state, like in the northern part of India, and you grew up in one state from the southern part of India, and you could have completely different experiences. So like someone who grew up in Kerala, like they're in the tropical part of India. What grows around them is coconut. It was colonized by the Portuguese, so many people are Roman Catholic. You see seafood dishes, you see beef dishes, you see different types of dals and things like that. It's also where a lot of the spices grow. So a lot of black pepper grows there, a lot of cardamom grows there. So you'll see the influence of those spices on many of the dishes. Now, at the same time, if you grew up in the northeastern part of India, where you're in the Himalayas, there's no coconuts over there. There's no spices over there, right? But they might have increased dairy production. People might be a little bit more predominantly Hindu, so you might find more vegetarian dishes. Things like potatoes and cauliflower, eggplant might be more wheat-based as well. So having more breads as opposed to down south where more things are made with rice and lentils. So, of course, when Britain came to India and colonized India, when they went back, they wanted to enjoy those flavors that they had. but they had kind of made their own version of it, right? Just like how we have American Chinese food, like, General Tso's chicken, delicious, but it's not something that Chinese people really eat, right? It's a product of Americans kind of trying to create something that they would like. So, dishes like chicken tikka masala, like those are British dishes. They're not Indian ones. Even spices that people think Indian people use, right? Like everybody always asks me like, oh, you must cook with so much curry powder. And I'm like, no, we never use curry powder. And it's not a thing that my mom ever used because, again, it is a British ingredient. Part of the Taylor story is kind of looking at people's base assumptions of the cuisine and kind of showing that, hey, like there is a difference between the food you find in most Indian restaurants and the food you find in people's homes. And to me, the real cooking of India is what happens in people's homes. And so to me, it's like we want to push a little bit of people starting to become more curious about Indian cuisine. And we try to do that with our guests by showing them dishes that you can't get them in any restaurant in the world besides at Taylor. Or you have to go to some auntie's house.
I think that's what makes this collaboration with the bagel shop so special, because you're going to be getting these ingredients in front of people that maybe won't normally be trying that sort of thing. Margaret, how do you think Nashvillians will react to this type of bagel fusion?
They're definitely bagel purists. I admit that I sometimes am one. I don't really consider a blueberry bagel a bagel because in my mind, bagels are savory. But so there definitely are going to be people in that camp. But I also think that people are really excited to try new things. One of the upsides of so many people moving to town is there are people with so many different backgrounds who have eaten different food other places. And I think people are excited to share those things. I also think that this is, again, just a really kind of low stakes way to try something new, right? You go to the bagel shop in Donaldson, you get a sandwich. It's not very expensive comparatively. And it's not several hours of your time. So you try it. And if it's not for you, okay, you still kind of learn something. You learn something that's not for you. And you come back for the next new year and try something different. I think probably for people who aren't foodies, that's probably a little less intimidating than making a reservation at Taylor and having this experience where maybe they don't know what to expect or whatever. So I think for that reason, I think that people will respond to it really well. And then the people who are foodies who like to try everything and do like, to go to multi-course meals, this is just like an extra bonus. And I've talked about this a few places. The whole vibe in that area where the bagel shop is in Donaldson, I had this as one of my writer's choices in the Nashville Scene Best of Nashville issue, is that whole area of Donaldson has just been completely revitalized. That's where the new library is. There are a bunch of other new restaurants. Bagel Shop has this little parklet, which is with the Civic Design Center turning one of their parking spots into a park where you can, a park, air quotes, where you can sit and eat. And so it just has this really collegial vibe for this whole area that really used to just feel like a strip mall. And so it just, to me, it just feels like a really special community vibe and also kind of an example of maybe what we could do in other neighborhoods.
We're back with food and travel contributor Margaret Littman and the award-winning chef Vivek Surti from Taylor. This is for both of you all. Do you think that we're having like a bagel boom here in Nashville? Because growing up here, I think I just went to Donut Den to get donuts and then sometimes a bagel, but it certainly wasn't as great as the New York bagels that I had experienced. But now we really are. It feels like there's everywhere you turn, there's a new bagel shop.
I am so glad you asked. This actually was one of my other writer's choice picks in the Best of Nashville issue for the Nashville Scene. We definitely are having like a bagel renaissance. Same thing when years ago when I was here as a college student or when I moved back in 2007, there was not a decent bagel. And again, not to be that bagel snob or that person who says that's not really a bagel, but there was not a decent bagel.
Mm-hmm.
And now I had to work to make a list of all the bagel places in town. Like I don't know them all off the top of my head. And they're all over the city. It's not just one neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
For a long time, I loved Proper Bagel, but that's not really in my neighborhood. And so I would have to sort of think about, okay, when I'm going over to that part of town, I have to go to Proper Bagel. But now there's some in Donaldson, there's some in Creve Hall. It's literally, there's Mount Juliet. It's all over. So that's pretty exciting.
It is so exciting, especially since I spent 15 years in New York and just moved back and I want a bagel.
I don't know why exactly this happened, but a lot of people started making bagels during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
All of us were sort of, right, looking for some way to keep our brains occupied. But several of those people, including Max and Kayla at the bagel shop, that's what led them to then start a bagel business.
Vivek, can you tell us a little bit more about Diwali and how maybe your family celebrates it here in Nashville?
Diwali is the festival of lights in India.
Mm-hmm.
And the story behind it is really one of the Hindu epics, which is called Ramayana. During the story of the Ramayana, kind of the short version of it is Lord Rama is the king of Ayodhya, but then gets exiled. And so spends a lot of time kind of outside of Ayodhya with his brother. And his bride-to-be gets kidnapped by a demon king. And so kind of his journey while he's in exile is to try to go get his wife back. And so he goes, to the kingdom of Lanka, finds the demon king, fights him, kills him. Then he gets his bride back and gets accepted again by the people of Ayodhya who recognize him as their true king. And they put candles in front of their doors to light the way for him back home. And so it's kind of really a celebration of good over evil, light over darkness. And so as a family, the way that we always celebrate it, my mom, of course, first, it's like decorating the house, right? So just like kind of how we celebrate like Christmas or Halloween and things like that, it's like you get the house ready with all the decorations. So there's always lots of candles, which we call diyas, that are kind of placed at the entrance of the house, but also like she had them on the dining room table. She had them in the bathroom. She had them like all over the kitchen,
Mm-hmm.
And there's also what they call rangolis, which are kind of artwork that usually happens on a floor. So traditionally in India, you do this at like the entrance to your home, and sometimes it's made with sand, but we used to do ours with chalk. And so we'd have like little outlines that my sister and I, we could kind of outline outside and then color on the floor with chalk. Like all Indian celebrations are big, so they always take place over the course of a week. So every day has like a different meaning, right? So we have some days that are meant where we remember our ancestors. So we always cook like my grandparents' favorite foods to eat. We have another day where we pray for wealth for the family. So not just financial wealth, but also personal wealth and good health and things like that. So we have a little prayer and ritual that we do for that. We have, of course, the Diwali, where we have lots of sweets and lots of little snacks, and people are always coming throughout the house, but you kind of have your big feast meal. And then you have what we call a Bestuvaras, which is where it's kind of like New Year's Day. New Year's Eve is kind of Diwali, and then New Year's Day is Bestuvaras, where you go around and you say Sal Mubarak to everybody and wish them a happy New Year. And then there's a brother-sister ceremony called Bhai Dooj, which happens on the last day.
Wow. Are there any other chef collaborations coming up here in Nashville that either of you are looking forward to?
There are so many. It's so fun. It's almost, again, like all the bagel shops, it's kind of hard to keep track of. I know Fonda and 12 South is having something focused on the Yucatan Peninsula in November. There's just so much stuff. But like Vivek mentioned earlier, I love it when chefs I love come to town, but I think sometimes that overshadows the collaborations that local chefs are having together. And so those are sort of the ones that I appreciate.
In February, the Convention Visitors Bureau does Dine Nashville, which is always a fun collaboration. It's kind of like restaurant week for some restaurants, but also they have like chef collaborations all throughout. So we've been able to do a few fun ones over the years, and I think like what's been new, I think, about a lot of the chef collaborations in town is I feel like 10 years ago those collabs used to be like, okay, you do one dish from my restaurant, you do one dish from your restaurant, one dish from mine, one dish from yours. So it wasn't as like, you could still kind of get those dishes if you went to the restaurants. And now, like, I feel like a lot more people were trying to be like, we don't want to do that. Like, let's create something completely new that comes about from like our shared experience. But it's like, let's take some of your ideas and take some of mine and let's put them together and let's see what can happen. So I think sometimes people might say, oh, I'm not as interested in this collaboration because I might as well just go to this restaurant and then I can go to this restaurant. But I think once you put these two together, you're creating some really fun dishes that you can't really get unless that collaboration happened.
And then that feels, as a diner, that feels really special, right? Because you had this one-time experience and it was so great and you could tell people about it, but it will never be recreated just like that. And so it does make it feel special. And also, you know, in an economy where people are really thinking about how they're spending money, to spend it on something that like is this really one-time occurrence, I think makes it worthy of a special occasion.
That's right. And I think it's very true to like our musical roots as well. You know, it kind of feels like, yes, you can listen to one album and it can be great and you can listen to somebody else's, but then you put them on stage with each other or you put them in a room with each other and you kind of see how they riff off each other. And it makes it so much more fun. And, you know, it's like, I feel like with concerts too, we've been seeing like when people come to Nashville, I think Post Malone was here over the weekend, you know, and like Blake Shelton came on stage, you know, and like, that's something that you just don't see, you know, unless you're at like this show in this place. And, you know, it's kind of creating those special moments for guests. Because I think more and more people are, you know, we're kind of leaning towards like either very convenient foods or we want very experimental. And the middle is kind of getting lost a little bit. So it's like the more I feel experiences that we can create that are fun and unique and different that you really can't get otherwise, make it even more special.
What a time to be alive here in Nashville.
Yeah.
No kidding.
We really are bringing people together with food, and what a beautiful thing. So thank you both for being on today. I look forward to tasting your bagel and look forward to all the other ones celebrating the new year.
Thank you for having us.
Awesome. Thank you, Marie.
That's all for today here on CityCast Nashville. And hey, y'all, please go check out those bagel sandwiches from the Bagel Shop. I know I will. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our Hey Nashville newsletter. And remember, folks, today is the last day for early voting in Tennessee. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Toodles!